Harold had always considered himself a healthy man. At 75, he still enjoyed long walks in the park, played chess at the community center twice a week, and never missed a chance to attend his grandchildren's school events. His energy was steady, his appetite unchanged, and aside from the occasional stiff knee, he felt pretty well. So when his daughter insisted on booking a full checkup, he reluctantly agreed more to ease her mind than out of personal concern. What happened during that visit would shift Harold's entire understanding of what it meant to be healthy. His doctor, a calm and observant woman named Dr. Ellis, greeted him with a warm smile. As they talked, she paid close attention, not just to his words, but to his skin, his nails, and even the faint sourness to his breath. After the examination, she gently pointed out 3 hygiene-related changes she'd noticed: dry, discolored patches on his lower legs, signs of bleeding along his gums, and thickening yellowish toenails. These weren't cosmetic flaws. They were warning lights on the dashboard of his health. Blood tests and scans confirmed her suspicions. Harold was showing early signs of kidney stress and cardiovascular strain, conditions that had silently crept in over time. He was stunned. "But I feel fine," he said. Dr. Ellis nodded. "That's the tricky part," she replied. "The body whispers before it screams." That conversation stayed with him. He thought back to all the times he'd dismissed the dryness of his skin as just age, or assumed his gums bled because he brushed too hard. These small signs had been there, but he hadn't known how to read them. It was humbling and, in a way, empowering. He had always assumed health meant no pain, no visible illness. But now he understood. Health is also about attentiveness, about the quiet messages the body sends. In the weeks that followed, Harold adjusted his routines. He paid more attention to his hygiene, not just for cleanliness, but as a daily check-in with his own body. His story is not rare. Many older adults feel well while silent problems grow. Often, it's not a lab result, but a detail in personal care, a change in skin, breath, or grooming habits that alerts a good doctor to danger. Hygiene, then, is far more than a habit. It's a mirror, and sometimes it reflects more than we expect. When Sylvia turned 68, she assumed the little inconveniences she experienced were simply part of growing older. Her knees cracked more than they used to, her hands were stiffer in the mornings, and her gums occasionally bled when she brushed her teeth. That last one she thought especially harmless. "It's just age," she told herself, swishing a little water in her mouth and moving on with her day. Sylvia had been a school teacher for over 30 years and took pride in her resilience. She lived alone, kept a neat home, and read classic novels before bed. Oral hygiene had always been a part of her routine, but over time she became less consistent. Her toothbrush was years old. She brushed quickly, without much attention, and had long ago given up flossing. Dental visits were rare. "Why bother when most of my teeth are gone?" she reasoned. One afternoon, during a routine cardiology checkup, her doctor noticed something troubling. Her heart sounded irregular. Further tests revealed inflammation in her heart valves, a potentially life-threatening condition. The source? Bacteria that had entered her bloodstream through her gums. It was a moment of quiet shock for Sylvia. She'd never imagined that neglecting her mouth could affect her heart. Her cardiologist explained that untreated gum disease, even in patients with dentures or partials, could introduce harmful bacteria into the bloodstream. These microorganisms didn't stay in the mouth. They traveled, clinging to vulnerable tissues like the heart. "Good oral hygiene isn't just about teeth," the doctor said gently. "It's about protecting everything inside you," Sylvia began, to reevaluate her habits. She replaced her toothbrush with an electric one, set a timer for 2-minute sessions twice a day, and finally made peace with dental floss. It wasn't glamorous work, but it gave her a sense of control. She also scheduled regular cleanings with a local dentist who helped her monitor her gums and oral tissues. The change didn't happen overnight, but it brought peace of mind. She felt more connected to her well-being, as though her care for herself finally reflected the value she placed on her life. For anyone reading Sylvia's story, take a moment to consider your own habits. Is your toothbrush older than 3 months? Do you floss regularly? Have you postponed your last dental visit? These aren't small questions. They could be the difference between silent danger and safe, healthy aging. Your mouth speaks not only in words, but in warning signs, if you're listening. Clarence had always been a man of habit. At 77, he still folded his shirts the same way he had learned in the Navy, and preferred his breakfast toast slightly overdone. Living in rural Vermont, he spent much of his time reading newspapers by the window or tending to his modest garden. He considered himself low maintenance. Bathing once a week was enough, he thought, especially during the cold months when the water made his skin feel dry and tight. He used the same bar of soap for years, the one with a strong scent that reminded him of his youth. Moisturizers? That was something his late wife used. Clarence didn't think much about skin beyond shaving his chin every few days and toweling off after a shower. To him, skipping a few baths wasn't laziness. It was economy. Fewer baths meant less water and less drying of the skin, or so he believed. Then came the doctor's visit. Clarence had scheduled an appointment for his blood pressure, but during the examination, the physician noticed a faint grayish discoloration on his shins and slight swelling near his ankles. The Maidui skin looked dull, almost paper-like, and patches of dryness stretched across his calves. The doctor gently asked about his bathing routine, and Clarence chuckled, "Once a week, give or take. My skin doesn't like soap." What followed was not scolding, but concern. After some tests, Clarence learned he was in the early stages of kidney dysfunction. The skin changes had been among the first visible signs. If not for the doctor's close attention, the issue might have gone unnoticed for months, or longer. Skin, his doctor explained, is not just a barrier. It's the body's largest organ, and often the first place internal problems show themselves. Dryness, discoloration, and itching can be silent signals from organs like the liver or kidneys, long before blood tests raise alarms. Clarence was shaken, but also grateful. He began bathing 3 times a week using a gentle, fragrance-free cleanser. After each bath, he applied moisturizer while his skin was still damp. He even placed a small mirror on the floor to better examine the soles of his feet and back of his legs, checking for any new spots or rashes. He came to view bathing not as a chore, but as a daily act of observation and respect. His skin, once ignored, had spoken up. And because he listened, he got the help he needed. For Clarence, it wasn't just about being clean. It was about being present with his body and honoring the messages it gave. Beatrice had never paid much attention to her toenails. At 82, she had long given up open-toed shoes, opting instead for comfortable slip-ons and thick socks. Her feet weren't for showing off, she reasoned. They were for keeping her steady as she moved around her small home in coastal Maine. But over the years, her toenails began to thicken and yellow. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they changed shape and color until they no longer resembled the smooth nails of her youth. At first, she thought little of it. "It's just age," she murmured whenever she struggled to clip them. She had stopped. Visiting the salon after her husband passed, and bending down for regular trims was no longer easy. Instead, she hid her feet and tried to ignore the discomfort. But the pressure in her shoes grew noticeable, and walking long distances became unpleasant. Still, she didn't think it serious. Then one morning, she noticed a persistent pain in her right foot. What began as a dull ache had become a throb, especially at night. Reluctantly, she booked an appointment with a podiatrist. The doctor took one look at her feet and shook his head gently. What Beatrice dismissed as aging was a fungal infection that had been festering for years, allowed to flourish unchecked. More than that, the infection had spread beneath the nail beds, creating pressure and inflammation that risked serious complications. But there was more. The infection had taken hold not just because of neglect, but because Beatrice's immune system was weakened. Further testing revealed underlying deficiencies her primary doctor hadn't yet detected. Her thickened nails had been messengers, bearing warnings she hadn't known how to read. The podiatrist treated the infection and taught her proper nail care, trimming straight across, keeping the nails dry and clean, and using tools sanitized after each use. He encouraged her to wear breathable footwear and to examine her feet weekly, looking for changes in texture, color, or sensitivity. Beatrice took the advice to heart. She created a small ritual on Sundays, soaking her feet, gently, scrubbing, moisturizing the skin, but never between the toes, and trimming her nails with care. It became more than hygiene. It was a moment of self-connection. Her story serves as a quiet reminder that our bodies often whisper before they cry out, and something as simple as a toenail, often hidden from view, can be the first to raise a flag. All we need to do is look and listen. Douglas had always been a man of order. At 73, retired from his career as an accountant, he kept his life well arranged. Bills paid on time, shirts pressed, books alphabetized on the shelves. There was comfort in structure, in privacy, in managing things quietly. But when he first noticed the wetness in his underwear, he didn't know where to place it. It felt like a betrayal, small, humiliating, something he couldn't quite bring himself to admit, even to his reflection in the mirror. At first, he told himself it was a one-time accident. Then it happened again and again. Still, Douglas did what he'd always done. He improvised. He started folding paper towels into neat squares, lining his briefs like invisible shields. He kept extra pants in his car, carried plastic bags, just in case, and planned his days around the location of bathrooms. But with every adjustment, his world shrank. He declined lunch invites, skipped long walks, and avoided travel altogether. The fear of being exposed was greater than the inconvenience. What Douglas hadn't prepared for was the physical cost. His skin, constantly damp and irritated, began to break down. Redness turned to rawness. The discomfort grew persistent, and sleep became restless. When sores developed on his upper thighs, he could no longer pretend it wasn't happening. With a quiet sense of defeat, he made an appointment with his doctor. To his surprise, the physician was neither shocked nor judgmental. In fact, she listened with empathy and explained that over half of men his age experience some form of incontinence. What's more, hiding it, avoiding medical advice, using makeshift materials, and delaying care often leads to worse outcomes. Douglas was lucky. His tests revealed an enlarged prostate that, though serious, was still manageable with treatment. The solution wasn't dramatic. It involved using products designed specifically for incontinence, breathable, discreet, comfortable. He learned how to clean and protect his skin properly, how to manage fluid intake smartly, and, most importantly, how to talk about it without shame. The change was gradual but profound. He felt safer in his own body, less restricted by fear, more connected to life again. Douglas now speaks openly with his doctor and has even encouraged friends to do the same. His message is simple but powerful. Incontinence is not a sentence, and it certainly isn't a secret. It's a health concern, nothing more, nothing less, and it deserves care, compassion, and attention, not silence. Patricia had always been meticulous. A retired librarian from Washington, she spent her life surrounded by books, order, and quiet. Even in retirement, she maintained routines with care. Breakfast at 7:30, afternoon tea at 3:00, and her favorite mystery novel before bed. Among her habits was one she never questioned: cleaning her ears every morning with a cotton swab. It was something she had done for decades, a ritual as natural as brushing her teeth. She believed it kept her ears clean, presentable, and free of buildup. She'd never been told otherwise. So when she began to feel a strange fullness in her left ear, she assumed it was wax. She pushed the swab in a little deeper, hoping to dislodge whatever was stuck. Instead, sharp pain shot through her head, followed by a ringing sound she couldn't silence. By evening, she had a fever. The next morning, her son drove her to the emergency clinic. The doctor's face turned serious as he examined her ear. She had ruptured her eardrum, and an infection had already set in, spreading to nearby tissue. Patricia was stunned. She hadn't known that her trusted routine could be so harmful. The doctor explained that the ear canal is delicate and self-cleaning. Cotton swabs, especially when inserted deeply, don't remove wax. They push it further in. Worse, they can scratch the lining, introduce bacteria, or, as in Patricia's case, cause perforation. The infection required immediate treatment, and though she eventually recovered, she suffered partial hearing loss in that ear, permanent. Damage from a simple habit she thought was harmless. She was heartbroken, not just from the injury, but from the realization that no one had warned her sooner. Now, Patricia shares her story with friends at the senior center. She urges them to reconsider old habits and to ask questions about things they've always done. She also learned safer ways to care for her ears, cleaning only the outer part with a warm, damp cloth, using over-the-counter drops when necessary, and seeing a doctor for any blockage, pain, or hearing change. She now understands that hearing isn't just about sound, it's about connection. The voices of loved ones, the rustle of wind through leaves, the music of her youth. These are things too precious to risk. If there's one lesson Patricia holds close, it's this: no part of the body should be treated casually, especially not the ones that bring us closer to the world. Raymond had always taken pride in his independence. At 76, he still drove himself to the grocery store, trimmed his own hedges, and brewed strong black coffee every morning. A retired factory worker from Illinois, he had grown used to, ignoring small discomforts. When the skin on his feet began to crack and peel, he dismissed it as dryness from age or weather. "Old feet get ugly," he joked to his neighbor once, waving it off. But over time, the cracks grew deeper, and numbness began creeping into his toes. It wasn't painful, just strange. Still, he didn't mention it to his doctor during checkups. There were more important things to discuss, he thought. Only when his podiatrist noticed the condition during a routine nail trim did the real concern begin. Tests revealed early-stage diabetes. The dry, cracking skin and reduced sensation were classic signs. If caught later, it could have led to ulcers, infections, or even amputation. Raymond was stunned. He had no idea his feet had been speaking to him quietly all along. At the same time, another change had crept into his life, one he hadn't connected to anything medical. His daughter, visiting for a weekend, wrinkled her nose and asked, "Dad, did something spoil in the fridge?" But the smell wasn't from food. It was Raymond himself. His body odor had changed, growing sour despite regular bathing. He assumed it was just age, or maybe warmer weather. In truth, it was a side effect of a new medication he had started 3 months earlier. The drug, while effective, altered his metabolism and liver function, resulting in changes to sweat composition. His doctor explained that some medications can cause dry mouth, skin changes, or unusual odor as early signs of how the body is reacting. These aren't hygiene problems, they're medical signals. Raymond learned to track changes more carefully. He began journaling new symptoms when starting any medication. Differences in energy, appetite, skin, or smell. He stayed hydrated, checked his feet daily, and wore moisture-wicking socks to protect his skin. Most importantly, he brought concerns to his doctor early, no matter how small they seemed. He now views hygiene not just as maintenance, but as surveillance, an ongoing conversation between body and mind. A cracked heel or strange odor may not feel urgent, but in the story of health, they're often the first lines. And when you learn to read them, you give yourself the gift of time, choice, and the chance to act before it's too late.